In verse 36 we read, after some days, let's read verse 34. However, it seemed good to Silas to remain there, and Paul and Barnabas also remained in Antioch, teaching and preaching the word of God with many others. And then after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us now go back and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord and see how they are doing. You know, if you really want God to use your life, you're going to have a passion for the Lord that drives you. Not pressure, that's also a P word, you know. Not people, it's also a P word. You got to have passion. Passion for the things of God. And Paul, if he had anything that you can learn from him, had tremendous passion. God tends to use people that are willing to be busy. You know, Paul traveled, taught, argued, stood up, got beat up, thrown in prison, and just kept going. This guy was a busy guy. He had been on one very long, extended trip. He'd been involved with the doctrine of the grace issue. He was back home serving in his church. But there were a lot of folks there that were good at teaching, and Paul felt an obligation to more than just the local body at Antioch. Being a missionary-type pastor, he really hungered to see how the saints that he had led to the Lord, the churches that he had established, how they were doing. How were the various flocks doing? He had tremendous passion. And if God is going to use you, you're going to have passion. You know what so often happens to people that go to church? They view the church as a place to get their needs met. They shop churches for that reason. Do they have concerts that I like? Do they have stuff going on at the time that I require? Do they fit into my time schedule? You know, are they likable? Are the seats comfortable? Do they not go too long? We have a whole list of things that we analyze a church by, having everything to do with serving me. That's a hard way to be passionate. Paul was beyond that, you know. He was doing all that he was supposed to do, but he hungered for more. He didn't like the comfort zone much. I mean, the church seemed to be thriving in Antioch. That must have been one cool place to go to church. But he went, man, there's a lot of good ministry here. We got to go out to see how all those folks we've left behind 4 or 5 years ago are doing. And he wanted to reach the world. He wanted his life to matter. And as a pastor who had a pastor's heart, he loved the flock. He longed to see the churches. He wanted the gospel to go out beyond, you know, the 4 walls that he sat in and met with every week. He had a tremendous passion for the saints and for the lost. And I think that he must have believed that the church at Antioch had plenty of good leadership, so he desired to go out even more. He wanted to go back to Galatia, which is on your map there, a province, to Pamphylia, to Pisidia, to Cilicia. You know, he desired to go and tell these guys about the good news that the elders in Jerusalem had made a decision about the Gentiles so that he could protect them from these Judaizers who were going to be on the road literally until Paul was arrested and killed. So we will read in verse 4 and 5 here in a little bit about delivering those messages. But Paul's fire came from a passion. And if you read the epistles, you know, whether Paul has been, say, 5 years or 15 years or 30 years, he has this driving passion that is created in his life because of his great awareness of how much God loved him. And he realized what the Lord had done for him. He said to the Corinthians, I think in 2 Corinthians 4, because we have this ministry and we've received mercy from God, we don't lose heart. There's no way I'm going to be discouraged because of what God has done for me. He said in the very next chapter, 2 Corinthians 5, that the love of Christ was compelling him. That God's love for him just kept him going. And if you find somebody who realizes they've been loved much, God will use them much. You know, to whom much is given, much is required. And Paul felt like a debtor for sure. You know, if you lose the drive and the motivation and the willingness even to pay the cost to go share your faith, it won't be long as a Christian that you dry up and settle in and you start to say to yourself, well, what can this church do for me? You know, serve me. But the church isn't really about that, is it? The church is about God, use me. Pour out your Spirit upon me. Send me forth. Not just find out for myself. And I hope that you can ask yourself that, you know, what kind of passion level is in your heart for the Lord and for his people and for the lost, and how can it grow?